and welcome back to the show. We have as our guest today D.R. Rawson, who just came out with the book Understand Your CIC Score. And that's a really interesting title. I'm going to start with the wide open question. What's the CIC score?
Well, a CIC score is that, let's see, how do I put it? It's not like a credit score. It's not like that, except that it can vary. Now, a credit score is kind of like credibility, isn't it? I mean, if you said you've got an 850 credit score, people go, right? They're making an assessment based on that number. But if you sit down and do the very best you can to be credible, and there's a lot of things that we'll talk about that go into that, and people say, "Oh yeah, that Gary Friedman, you can trust him. He does what he says." Your credibility is way up here.
So the credibility, that's the first C in CIC.
No, it's not. Actually,
Oh,
character is. Because
okay.
in order to get to the formula is this, the formula is simple. It's character plus integrity equals your credibility.
Okay, so that's where the C, I, and C comes from.
That's where the CIC comes from. So you
Okay.
start with character because character is all about you and it's about what you've learned and everything you take. For example, one of the things that I like to use, and I'm just bringing up my notes because there's a couple of key points I wanted to make, so just bear with me just a moment. But one of the things that I think about character is that the first piece of it is respect. Now, that's the very first character item I ever recognized, even as a kid, is the teacher said, "You need to do this." And you either respected the teacher or there was friggin' chaos everywhere, right?
Yes,
But
yes.
also, the teacher gave respect. When you said something, I hurt, the kid's bothering me, I need to do this or do that. The teacher listened, actually listened. And that's how you demonstrate respect. So character is all about all kinds of things. The first ones are respect, responsibility, resilience, kindness, and joy. Those are the first five. Then you got five more after that for adults, and then another 15 that we teach children. And the 15 really support the first 10. And they're all listed in that book.
So these are all timeless values, right? I mean, you've been in the military. They drum this into your head, right? So none of
Mhm.
this is new.
No,
Why come out with this book now?
because it's not being taught, Gary. That's the biggest single thing. You know, when we first began this thing with children, which was with Tiny Tales Land, we were writing to teach children character. And about 6 months into it, we go, geez, I think adults need this as bad as children do.
Yes.
And you realize, what kind of a world would it be if everybody actually understood respect and actually gave respect? Would that make a difference in our world? Oh my gosh. What if everybody was accountable? There's a thought.
It's a
They
nice
were actually
idea.
responsible for things, right? And then you can just go right down the list. Why do so many kids, particularly in their 20s and 30s, just literally fall apart? Zero resilience. They're not taught resilience at home. They're not taught, certainly not taught it in the schools. And so the first challenge that comes about, they just have a meltdown. They don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to come through it. They don't know how to
They
cheer
have
themselves
they
or others.
haven't had any challenges or struggles in their youth that they had to learn how to overcome.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You think back to previous generations, like we come from the generation from the Great Depression, and our parents, oh my God, they struggled like crazy. I remember stories of eating potato. They had a potato cellar. And so during the winter, there isn't a way you can think of that potatoes are prepared that they didn't eat all winter long. Potato,
Yes.
potato, potato. Still, my father liked potatoes later in life. It surprised me. But they were resilient. That's what they did. And it wasn't about being a tough guy, a macho guy. It was about understanding that this is what you do, and then we're going to make the best of it, and we're going to use this to get to the next level. That's a
Good.
whole different kind of approach.
Yeah.
So people don't understand that. So these are all character traits, and the character works towards integrity. So, for example, if you do understand respect and you're working with a group of people and you listen to them, you demonstrate respect, people feel that. Now, if you feel respected, what is your reciprocal value?
To
You tend
respect back.
to what?
To
What?
respect back.
To respect back. It's exactly right. One of the biggest challenges in America today is lack of engagement in companies. And the reason they have lack of engagement is from on high, the company says, we are going to do this, 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 and this. And the guy goes, why the hell should I do that? You don't do this, this, and this for me.
Yeah.
We're paying you we give you an amount of money every month. I don't care. You should at least be listening to me or something. I mean, they're so dissatisfied. There's lack of engagement. And there's lack of engagement because right from the very top, from the CEO's position, and as you know, I've been a CEO since I was 21.
Yes.
People do not respect their employees, period. I mean, I'd like to say full stop, and I'd like to say it's 100%, but it's not. You know that. I mean, you're an employer yourself, and you've had employees over time, and you respect the people. I know you do because I know you do.
Yes.
And there are a lot of people who do. But corporations and companies in general are getting to the point, particularly those that are run by those kids that are in their 20s, 30s, and early 40s. They're not giving respect to others. They never had respect. They're not giving respect.
They probably inherited the company and they just want to pretend that they're in charge and then move on
That's it.
to other
I'm
things.
the guy. I'm the guy. And so character is really important. You learn all these things about gratitude and kindness and joy and honesty and all these things. Those are all character traits. Okay, fine. You learn to do those. That's all about what you do. Okay. And you do that in front of others. Others see you respectful. Others see you go through a tough time and become very resilient, come out the other end, and you go, wow, okay, that was tough, but I made it. And look, I learned all these lessons from that, right? So
Mhm.
others see that and they see it in you. And that's what character is. People see that in you easily.
I would say, as I was reading through this book, you have a lot of self-assessment exercises. And I thought to myself, this would be almost mandatory reading for new CEOs and people who haven't run companies before, because
Oh,
these are all qualities that have been traditionally associated with great leadership.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In your life, can you give me some examples of leaders that you looked up to that express these qualities? That's a question from left field. I apologize.
Wow, it is from left field, but I'm trying to think real quick about those leaders. One of the reasons I became a CEO and stayed a CEO is I didn't like working for other people because they didn't have these values. Okay, so give you a classic case. Uh, my first company was at 21, and I sold it when I was 22, and made quite a bit of money from it. And I went to work for somebody else because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. My dad did. He worked for somebody. Your dad probably worked for somebody as well. And so, yeah, that's what you do. You grow up and you be an adult, you work for somebody else.
Right.
So I was pretty good and still am pretty good at marketing. And so this guy hired me to be his national sales manager. And he spent all of about 25 minutes assessing what I did. Okay.
Hmm.
After 6 months, I walked into his office and I said, Jim, why don't you sell the company? He said, no, why would I do that? I said, because you don't know anybody in the company. Let me ask you a question. What's the name of your assistant? Hey, you. Really? What's the name
Really?
of the person that you trust with your funds? What do you call the accountant? Hey, you. I said, really?
Not even the C-level executives? You didn't know those people by name?
All
Inconceivable.
he cared about was the profit he was making every month. This guy was a retired stockbroker. He found a company that had a good margin and a respectable margin and was consistently producing profits and was for sale, bought it. Knew absolutely nothing about the product, knew
Wow.
nothing about how to service customers, had never been in an industry where you had to service customers because he was a stockbroker. So that's quite a bit different than taking a crane out and putting it in somebody's business. Completely different skill sets.
Well, that's a formula for having the company that you bought crumbled slowly over time
Well,
as
except
employees become disillusioned.
except that he had people that cared enough on their own that would keep it going. But every time he got involved, people got pissed off and left the company.
Ah,
And the customers would too. They'd say, "No, I'm not doing business with you." So anyway, I said to him, I said, "Jim, sell the company." He said, "Why would I do that?" I said, "Because nobody likes you." He said, "Well, does that include you?" I said, "Well, let me tell you, my bags are packed and I'm ready to move into that camp." He said, "Well, what?" I said, "Jim, you have absolutely no idea about this company. Other than the profit, you have no idea about this company. And this is not helping any of these people. They all have families. They all have responsibilities at home, and you don't care anything about that." I said, "Sell the company." So he finally said, "Who would I sell it to?" I said, "Me." "How old are you?" I said, "I'm 23. How could you?" I said, "See, now you're making my point. You don't even know enough about me to know whether I can afford to buy this company. Can you?" I said, "I don't know. What's the price you want for it?" He put a price on a piece of paper and I said, "Okay, I'll pay it." I made all my money back in 6 months.
wow.
We quadrupled the amount of business we were doing. We went from less than 100,000 a month to over a half a million a month in 9 months.
That's what good leadership does.
And everybody enjoyed the company. Everybody had a great time, and and the customers liked us. I mean, leadership is about a whole lot of things. I remember going to a customer and we had a problem for whatever reason. There's always one customer that you can't solve their problems. And we hit this customer and I fought hard for that contract. And I went back to him and I said, "I'm going to give you the contract back." Guy said, "Why?" I said, "Because we're just not doing a good job, and it's not fair to you, and it's not fair to us." I said, "But what I'd like in return is next year to be considered for the bid when it comes up." He said, "Okay." So I gave it to the next guy.
Huh.
Pulled completely out of that thing because we were just going, it was going to drag the whole company down. It was going to put him behind in his manufacturing. So it was crazy. But that, to me, that's character. And when you say, what leaders have I found that have done that? Well, Ronald Reagan was that way.
Uh-huh.
Okay. But he was never the president of a company I worked for. I was the president of the company I worked for. And this company we're talking about, I sold it 3 years later to all the employees of the company.
Outstanding.
Now, why did I do that? Because I wanted to teach them something and I wanted them to have the same opportunity I had. I made money from it.
Because you cared. Because
Yeah,
you cared.
I care. And time to move on. So anyway, character is something that you do. It's very personal to you. You learn it and others see that you've learned it very clearly. Your integrity, now that's a different issue.
Tell us about that.
Okay, so let's say that integrity is you've decided that whenever this happens, that's the result, and that's what you should do. And that's a good result. It works well. Somebody comes along and says to you, "Well, that's normally what we do, but I really, if you could stretch it out and just let me do this and do that, well, if you do that, I can promise you an extra $150,000 a month." But That's not what I said I'd do. That's not what I commit to as an individual. I've already said this is the line. You want to take it beyond that. So integrity usually winds up costing you something because you've held a belief that says this. And when somebody challenges that belief and under pressure, you make a different decision,
Right.
that takes away from your credibility, right? Takes
Right.
away from your integrity as well. So you lose integrity, that cuts down on credibility
So
because
set the
character,
set the boundaries, enforce the boundaries. Don't make promises you know don't make promises that you don't know you can't keep. It's
right.
two double negatives, but yes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so often people, they're under pressure. You've said this and this and this. This is going to happen and we do this. This is what we always do. This is company policy, so on and so forth. Somebody comes in and offers you a big stick or a big carrot, one or the other, and it challenges you in some way. And so you make a different decision. You just lost some of your integrity. And as a result, credibility. Now, credibility is unique because most people think, well, I'm a very credible person. If you have to say you're a credible person, you
You're
may
not a credible
be a
person.
credible person. Right.
You're not the one to judge.
That's right. Credibility is solely judged by others. And oftentimes you're not even around. So you're being considered for a position and they do some checking and five people say this guy can be counted on. Absolutely can be counted on. That credibility goes way up. You're not even in the room, but your past actions created a level of credibility that others have accepted.
The track record. Right.
Track record. Credibility is assigned by others always, always without exception.
Well, you certainly convinced everybody watching here that this is all worth learning and nothing new there. The book, as you've written it, is designed as a self-assessment. You read this periodically and you grade yourself on various qualities that you list. How long would it take somebody to go through this book, and how many times should they assess themselves over their lifetime?
Are you familiar with the book Think and Grow Rich?
I've heard of it, yes.
Did you ever read it?
No.
Okay.
And that's why I'm not rich.
Yeah. Good. Well, okay. Anyway, Think and Grow Rich. I read that book when I was 23, just when I bought that company. Over the next 2 years, I think every time I reread it, I had doubled my income because it taught me to think in a certain way and to set goals in a certain way. And it gave me a mindset on how to pursue things. That's what Think and Grow Rich did for me. Okay. So I really put this together with the idea it would be a companion to Think and Grow Rich.
Ah,
So in order to think and grow rich, you can do it because how many crooks do we know that are thinking and growing rich, right? Or how many great people do we know who are thinking and growing rich? It's always two, there's always a yin and yang. It's always
right.
opposites. So I wanted people to be able to use this book, be able to self-score. And if your score comes up to X, that's your score. It's not something I need to know. It's not something your wife needs to know, your cousin, your parents, or your employer. It's something you need to know. And as you look at it, you go, wow, okay, I'm a little weak in the integrity part. Well, why am I weak? And there's some reflective questions in there to ask you. So, are you doing this? Are you doing that? And it gives you a
Mhm.
chance to think that through. Now, so you're asking, can you use it again? It's a reusable book. And that's what Think and Grow Rich was. It's a reusable book. Because, Gary, everybody has a season in their life. You and I are both old enough to have seen lots of different seasons. We've seen
Yes.
financial seasons, we've seen growth seasons, we've seen, when you were a young man and you were inventing lots of different things as you've done, and then your career morphed and you did other things and other things. And so you've had different seasons. and different things change. And so your ideas change. You can have a well conceived idea about how money is actually made. And you can hold that thought in your 20s. By the time you get to your 40s, I'm going to guarantee you look at that and laugh and go, "Are you kidding me? You're missing this, this, and this. You could have made twice the amount of money if you'd thought of this, this, and this." It's a
Yeah.
different season and you have different experiences. So it's something that you should go back to. If you have a divorce, you have the birth of a child, you have a death of a parent or a sibling, or any of those major life changes, you move from one city to another, all these things change who you are a little bit. So you can go back through that book, regauge what you're doing, and see, where are you giving up? Are you giving up some of your integrity?
Ah.
You've forgotten some credibility things, or things that create credibility? And are you really full of character the way you used to be?
So maybe 6 or 7 times throughout a person's lifetime, depending on the major life changes that they go through.
I think that's probably a good number, Gary. 6 or 7 times. That's probably exactly right. I'm here just about ready to go into my eighth decade. And so
Mazel tov.
thank you. And so uh as I look back on my life, I've had at least 8 pivot points in my life. At least 8 pivot points. Big changes. Big changes. A divorce in one particular case. Uh the Well, I just had a lot of interesting things that have happened to me over the years. I started out homeless. And so I've had a pretty successful career with 30 companies. And that that's changed. It's constant change. And it wasn't 30 companies in one industry, as you know. It was a variety of industries.
You
So
you talk
all
you
of
talk about your business success in your other book,
yeah,
Unlikely,
yeah.
which by the way I enjoyed very much.
Did you? Thank you.
So I think that gives you the credibility to write something like this to help other people self-assess, reflect a little bit on meaningful qualities of good character. Am I summarizing this pretty well?
Yes, you are. And when you talk about my credibility, let me give you something about my credibility that a lot of people don't know about me. When I was in Vietnam, my parents both died. And so I still had a young brother and a young sister at home. And when my parents died, I had to take on my younger brother and sister. So I didn't have any parents. I didn't have anybody older than me to go to and say, "Hey," except my grandfather. My grandfather stepped up and he calls me on the phone. He says, "DR, you can't do this by yourself." He says, "I have raised children and you can't do this all by yourself, not at your age." Well, at the time, he was in his probably late 50s.
Uh-huh.
So he says, "I'll tell you what I am going to do." He says, "I'm going to make myself available to you." I said, "Grandpa, you're thousands of miles away. How are you going to make yourself available?" He says, "You ever heard of telephone? Call me." I know
Now,
this
as
kind
I
of kidding.
recall, he was a Mason, wasn't he?
He was a Mason. Exactly right. So he said to me, "Look, it's real simple." He says, "You're going to come across problems with your wife, with your children, with your business, even your spiritual life, every aspect of your life, you're going to come across a problem." He said, "Call me, use me as a resource. Call me, and what I'm going to give you is the principle that you need in order to solve that problem. I'm not going to give you the answer. I won't give you ever the answer. This is for you to discover based on a real principle." I said, "Okay, well, let's give it a shot, Grandpa." So I did. For 25 years after that, I'd call him every time I had a problem. And he'd say, "Well, this is the principle." And occasionally he'd say, "Do you remember the principle that, oh, yeah, okay, that's the one. All right." And conversations went like that. The day before he died, I'm bringing him down from Lake Isabella down into Bakersfield, California. We're riding down this windy road, and I'm trying to pay attention to the road, and he is just chatty Cathy. One of the things he said to me is, he says, "I want you to become a Mason." I said, "Grandpa, I own a business I'm in the ministry. I've got 6 children and a wife. I got a lot going in my life, and you want me to become a Mason too. Why would I do
At,
that?
ask a busy person if you want something done.
Yeah, yeah,
He understood that rule.
yeah, that's right. He clearly understood that. He said, I'll tell you why. He says, you know all those principles and values that we discussed all your life? I said, yeah. He says, they only came from 2 places. I said, what's that? He said, masonry and religion.
Mhm.
Oh, he says, I think you got religion handled, but you don't have masonry. I said, I'll become a Mason. And I went on to become a Mason, as you know. But it was those principles that led me to live a certain kind of life and to share with others, as I'm dealing with people in church, as I'm dealing with people in business. They come to me and they'd express a problem, and so I had that background of all these principles and values to do that. And along the way, I learned a lot about character because of these different principles and values.
Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of those trickled into the kind of questions that you're asking in the CIC book.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it did. Yeah. And in fact, there's some reflective questions there, but we're thinking about all kinds of different ways we can do that. Are you familiar with the books that they put on the kitchen table and on nightstands where you pick it up? It's kind of like they used to call them devotional books, but they're for all kinds of reasons. And
I've seen them, I've heard of them, yes.
it's like a page a day for whatever purpose you want. So we're thinking about doing that, taking a character trait and make it for that day, and then you give a couple of reflective questions and a challenge, and say, today, as you're going about your work, look for
Look
and
for an opportunity to do this or implement
to
that, or
do
look for someone else doing it
right. Yeah,
and reinforce that.
exactly. Kindness, for example. Kindness is probably the the best one of the coolest things. And I apologize, I've got a problem with my nose. Uh, Kindness is probably one of the coolest things to work with because kindness is what people don't get is that you can't give kindness away. You just try and be kind to everybody you can as much as you can, and it just floods back to you. You try and give it away, and it just keeps coming back.
Furthermore, it's free
Yeah,
and it
absolutely.
has a disproportionate effect on the people you give it to.
That's correct. That's correct. Yeah,
Not many entities in this world have those qualities where it's free and it has just a wonderful effect. This is hard to measure, but you know it's there.
that's right. You absolutely know it's there. Now, the next one that's kind of a tricky one is joy. Joy is something that actually lives within you all the time. Most people think, well, if I get this and somebody gives me $1,000, that's joyous and I'm excited.
No, no, it's got to
No,
come
that's
from within,
happiness.
not rely on external factors.
That's right. That's
Yes.
happiness. You're happy for the moment. That's not joy. Joy is an attitude, an expression that says, I see the good in lots of things. I see opportunity in lots of things. And you've got this overall attitude, overarching attitude, if you will. Imagine a company where there's no joy. Now, the example I gave you, there was no joy at that company, I'm telling you.
Right.
Now, you've worked at one of my companies. Was there joy in that company?
We loved every day.
We
Yes.
loved every day. It was a lot of fun. We made it fun.
And
And
we knew that you cared, not about us, but also about the outcome as well, of course.
yeah, of course. But you see, it's kind of like somebody asked me the other day, well, how when you earn money, what do you focus on? I said, not money. I never have focused on money. I said, I focus on a result. The result is if I help somebody accomplish something, somebody's going to compensate me. I don't have to worry about that. It's just going to come naturally. If you write a book, you're an author, or you write a book, and that book serves a purpose for someone, and they believe that it's going to solve their problem, they're willing to pay you for it.
Who
But you
was it?
didn't have to go up and
Who
say,
was
you got to
who
buy
was
this book.
who was it who said in order to get what you want, you have to help other people get what they want?
That's correct. Well,
Yeah.
that's been said by every motivational speaker on the planet.
Tony Robbins is where I heard it, but
Yeah,
yes.
Zig Ziglar is where I heard it. But the point is, it's exactly right. If you help enough other people get what they need, you'll always have what you need.
Mhm.
I'm a living example of that. It's always worked for me.
So when you were putting this book together, you must have been doing a lot of thinking because there's very reflective questions there. Was there anything that kind of surprised you as you were assembling it?
There's a lot of things that surprised me because there was questions that I hadn't fully asked myself. And as I came
Oh,
up with that question, I had to think, well, have I really thought that through for me? I mean, there was just questions that I came up with. And those questions came as a result, by the way, of a lot of research. You know, what makes people do this? What makes people do that? And I kind of had to understand that in order to ask the reflective question. Because then the reflective question had to be phrased in a certain way so that you can keep them focused on the item that you're reflecting upon. And it's not an easy trick.
yeah, yeah. Also, I was going through the book and I was looking at, you know, because I'm a former engineer, right?
Right.
So I look at some of the ways you're supposed to score yourself. And I say to myself, you know, classic management says if you can't measure it, you can't control it. So you're asking people to measure certain qualities of character. And I've heard so many times in my life, it's not something you can really measure. How do you get around that?
What's not something you can really measure? What?
Character. How do you measure
Oh,
character?
sure you can. Sure you can. Because in the book, you see, it's asking you certain questions about character. Do you understand this? Do you understand that? Do you understand how this works? Do you understand how that works? And
Mhm.
so you're answering yes, no, yes,
Right.
kind of. And it's a score of 1 to 5. So when you tally all that up, you're going to look at it and go back and go, wait a minute. If a perfect score would be 5 questions, all five, 5 times 5 is 25, that's a perfect score. I got a 19. What am I missing? And that's up to you to discover that. It's
Yeah.
not me. It's not something you go to your wife and say, oh, look, I'm missing 6 things.
So
It's
it kind of requires a self-reflective attitude and just going into it.
it's
Uh,
exactly.
and if people read your book for a year, maybe go through it twice, what kind of changes or alignments would you expect them to find about themselves after a year?
um,
Because we have to talk about benefits, you know.
oh yeah. When I was a young man, I thought about certain things about how to raise kids. I had a very particular idea about how to raise kids. And after asking my own children a lot of questions and seeing some behavior that I didn't anticipate, I
This is
realized
after they were grown, right?
no, this
Yeah.
is while they were growing because it
Oh,
was changing all the time because they're changing all the time. Their level of intellect changes, what their knowledge changes. I mean, it's just constantly changing. So I changed. And so that's what happens. So you're asking, is there going to be a change? Yeah, because you become more aware. I learned about this. I learned more about integrity, I think, than anything else. As
in
I
writing the book?
yeah, as I look back over my life, I can see where I drifted. You know, you're living a life of integrity, and then pressures in your life become so great that you start compromising in ways that aren't good for you or for others. And that affects your integrity and it affects your credibility. As you
Hmm.
become more self aware, you change.
And that's the ultimate benefit. That's why people should do this.
Yep. Yep.
We all need to be better people. The potential is inside every one of us. And I think it's a lifelong goal for all of us to reach our potential to be as good a person as we can be. And I think that's a good way to end this conversation because the book, I think, has tremendous value for those who are seeking to improve themselves. who are self-aware, who want to become better people and fulfill their potential. And this book, which I highly recommend to everybody, leadership position or not, can certainly benefit from.
Right.
DR, thank you so much for spending the time with us.
You're
And
welcome.
good luck on your mission because it's certainly a good one.
Thank you so much, Gary. I appreciate you. Thanks for taking the time.
Sure. Bye bye.
Bye bye.